So we'll try not to take too long today, but because students are stressed and
they need it now.
They need it now, and we don't want something overly long and lengthy to go over or review as far as students go, because they need actionable points that we can kind of share from our experiences and what we think is best for them to implement in this semester and in future semesters if they're coming back to school. So I think one thing we should start with, since this is your first time on the podcast, is just taking a brief moment to say who you are and why you're here, and hopefully here for the foreseeable future as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my name's Chelsea, and first and foremost, you'll find me here at Flow Spa on Sundays, and more to come. So stay tuned with that. I am a student, so this is relevant information to me. I'm just finishing up a degree in psychology, and I'm also a personal trainer downtown Peterborough at House Fitness. So you'll find me there lots of mornings and evenings.
Nice. Yeah, so I know that this is very relevant for you, being a student and also having some experience in the past, going through school several times now, and I've done the same thing. So I think over the course of my academic career, I was able to, evolve my stress reduction techniques and things that I would do during exam season to help me relax deeper or get through that stressful period. And as it's probably fresher in your mind, so go ahead and sort of talk about a few of the techniques that you use specifically, and then we'll kind of just jump back and forth on some of those ideas.
Well, what's first coming to mind is kind of what doesn't work. So yeah, I've been in school over the course of probably my whole life. I was going to say past 10 years. I've been in post-secondary at least.
Yeah.
And when I first was in university taking this first stab at my psych degree, what I would do is just cram, throw as much information in my face as I can, and I would spend majority of the time studying, worrying about whether or not I'm studying enough.
Okay, yeah.
And then really nothing was actually sinking in. So I would go into exam stressed, I would go in not feeling prepared. So I took note of all of those things. So one of the things that is my biggest technique, I guess, is not cramming.
Okay.
My max amount of time that I'll study for an exam per day is 2 hours. I will not do anything more than that because I get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I know my brain limits. I know, that's my capacity. And if I'm mindful about actually studying for those 2 hours, I get enough information in that I don't need to spend all day until 3 in the morning doing that. So what I do to kind of make that efficient, those 2 hours, is rid myself of distractions. So, no cell phone, no mental stress. So if I'm going through something mentally stressful, I try to deal with that before I actually get into studying so that I can come in with a clear mind. So whether that's just meditating first or doing some breath work, I am guilty of being a procrastinator, cleaner extraordinaire, so I tend to clean my space before I start studying because I do find that helpful.
Okay,
Definitely clears
totally.
my mind. And then being realistic within those 2 hours. So one thing I like doing, I pulled this from my training expertise, is I'm calling it study Tabatas. So for those of you who don't know, a Tabata interval would be doing an exercise for 20 seconds on and 10-second rest for 8 times. Or 8 rounds, and that takes a total of 4 minutes. But what I do in studying is I do 20 minutes on, 10 minute either mindfulness practice or just 10 minutes off doing something different, 8 times.
Cool.
Or 4 times, or however long I have in my window.
Yeah.
Because I don't get overwhelmed at 20 minutes. I can handle focusing in for 20 minutes and taking in as much as I can. And then, bam, it's done, and I'm just getting into that kind of flow zone of wanting to study, and then I take that 10-minute break and I actually want to get back, as opposed to just being I have this endless gap of time, and I'm going to do as much as I can, because that overwhelms me. So
cool.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. Did you that sounds very much like the Pomodoro technique.
What's that?
You're not even familiar
I'm
with
not
that.
familiar with
Interesting.
it, no.
It's like you've invented your own Telsey Tabata studying technique that's exactly like the Pomodoro technique.
Interesting.
So one of the primary productivity techniques, I forget the guy's name, but he called it the Pomodoro technique for whatever reason, is essentially the same as what you just said. To get to maximize your productivity in an hour is one of the ways. I mean, there's several depending on, I guess, your like mental endurance to get through an hour or a 90-minute time frame of deep work in any fashion. But it's 25 minutes of concentrated effort with 4 to 5 minutes, I think, of like a reset where you're not doing the same thing. And that means, like you said, something very mindful is great in that time frame. But it's really interesting that you've
I suppose I do that.
Yeah, without necessarily following this thing that's like a well-known productivity tool.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, there's apps and everything designed around it, so
right.
That's great. I think that's definitely. I don't think I ever really dialed in enough into that kind of actually how you implement the studying and everything. And I think that's hugely valuable. Knowing now how to like maximize productivity a bit more and work around things like that. So I would probably say, you know, I'd get into more of like a deeper, like concentrated state. I definitely, when I was doing the best sort of like exam prep, I'd keep it short too, and probably not overdo it within a day time span. So things that would help to divide that and sort of reset my brain came to mind a little bit more than the study techniques per se. And so I think we're probably on the same wavelength with this, but exercise is hugely important. So
Big time.
I mean, I would look forward to those gaps or those scheduled, even putting it in the schedule to make sure that it still had its place even when it was exam time and stuff. So what, I would have those 1 to 2 hours a day, most days, where I de-stressed by going to the gym and working out and resetting my brain that way. So do you do anything similar?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a non-negotiable for me, first off in regular life, but also especially during exams, is movement. If we want to bring science to it, blood flow. Let's get some blood flow to that brain. Let's get things moving. Let's get those neural connections firing so that things can solidify in your long-term memory. Specifically for me, I really value stretching. In exam time. I mean, I love doing other things too, but stretching is something I emphasize because I find, you're sitting at a desk all day and you're in the same position, and at least for myself, someone who's not used to sitting all day, I tend to really get stiff and kind of just feel locked up. And so I definitely make sure to stretch out my chest, because one, I can get more oxygen that way, but two, I'm hunched over, so I need to open that up. And I find stretching, like I just said, it definitely employs more oxygen into your system, and that's going to help you feel more alert. It's going to help you retain more information. But you can get that in other ways too.
Totally.
I mean, I was talking to Josh yesterday, and he was saying cardio is really helpful for memory retrieval. I haven't studied it myself. I don't know if you know anything about that, but he put me through a terrible cardio workout yesterday. Yeah, it sucked. But I mean, I did well on my exam yesterday, so maybe it had something to do with it. But yeah, I find just movement in general, like whatever works for you, is what's going to make you feel peace and relax. And so for you, if it's doing strongman stuff, for me, if it's doing yoga stuff, like cool.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that maybe a lot of students don't fully get yet, is that find the things that you actually like to do that are physical, and that it's going to be way more rewarding and de-stressing if you're going out and playing soccer, ultimate frisbee, or whatever. Find that thing that you like. There could be, I'm sure that the campuses have lots of like physical activity programs going on around exam time. It might be a little bit turned down because obviously everybody's got to focus on exams, but there's probably groups that are doing things that are fun and engaging, that are physical, because it's true. Yeah, I think one of the pioneers in that whole like exercise and memory research is John Rady, and he wrote this book Spark that's all about how primarily cardio or more aerobic activity helps with like memory consolidation, as well as, like you mentioned with Josh saying, like memory retrieval. So just sort of the blood flow to the brain. And I think that I read the book a long time ago, so I believe that it actually activates BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So that actually like helps with basically stimulating the neurons to form those new neuronal connections. Sorry.
Cool.
Still early. my tongue's not fully awake yet. And so that's where cardio can help with memory consolidation and formation and retrieval. Yeah, so definitely the exercise thing. Now, I think, in my opinion, that's where a lot more students get it right as far as their stress practices or stress reduction practices. And hopefully, that continues to expand to the population and more start working on that aspect. But the one that I think, looking back on it, probably needs more awareness and everything is sort of the idea of whether it's solitude or mindfulness, and having sort of that quality, whether it's alone time or with people that you're closely connected to, but kind of tuning out the world around you and getting into a more wholesome and true like state of relaxation. And I think, I mean, you mentioned yoga and stretching, and so I know that you're good at this. And what are some of the things that you do to incorporate more of that? And do you find that it's helping you to handle like the exam stress? Yeah,
I mean, one thing that I was just saying to my partner yesterday, one of my non-negotiables in life is outdoor walks. Partly because I have a dog who needs to move, but another thing is just getting into nature and being alone in nature. I don't usually invite people on my walks because they're my time. I value taking deep breaths and fresh air, and just kind of, I like to analyze my thoughts and see, if my mind, like I look at my mind from an outside point of view, and is it racing? Is it going through like stressing about things? And if it is, how can I adjust that? And if it's not, then I just kind of soak in the fact that, I found some peace. Nature's stimulated me enough to kind of take away the anxiety. So that's one thing I do. Another thing is I don't study with people. I know that sometimes having that accountability buddy is good, but it doesn't work for me because I want to just socialize and chat, and I don't stay on topic, and I don't stay focused because if they flinch or move or make a noise, I'm attentive to that. So I find even studying in solitude will help me be more present. And one of my kind of study affirmations or mantras is presence is power. Every time I find I'm drifting somewhere, I just remind myself, okay, being present is my power here, and then I hone back in. Cool.
Yeah, that's another good point. I think I can recall the times, like, it was funny, for the first 4 years of my university career, I never once stepped foot into the public, the Rovarts Library at U of T, and I sort of, that was where everybody went to study. And I kind of, looking back now, I can see how that was a smart move. I kind of just like instinctually knew that wasn't the best place for me to study. I get distracted too easily, and like a lot of, maybe do something like a nature walk or whatever, and just contemplate this idea. And or whatever it takes, but each student's, you know, a little bit different, and whether you're sort of towards the introverted or extroverted spectrum, I think that's going to impact where you're going to study best. Because like I hear people talk about, you know, they go to coffee shops and that's where they get into like a deep work sort of mode. Like they find their flow within a greater community with the stimulation around them, whereas others need like the absence of everything else in order to deeply focus. And so that's something that's hugely important, and it takes some time and some learning. So maybe if you're still like a young student and going through, you've still got a few more years to do this, take each exam or each end of the semester and try a slightly different strategy, and you'll start to dial in which works better for you over the course of the time. Hopefully you've still got some time to tweak that, but if not, then just, you know, quickly look deeply inside and see what resonates most with you. And yeah, the nature thing is hugely undervalued, I think. There's great research, and, you know, some of the best thinkers that ever existed made that time for those daily walks, and they used it. A lot of them used that as their like meditative time. It's very contemplative, and it's actually, it even, depending on like how brisk of a walk you're going on, it even ties into the whole stimulating like your brain in that way. But it's funny because, you know, we're so disconnected from nature in today's world, but the more that you can get back to nature, it just seems like everything works better for you. And fortunately, I think, you know, a lot of people listening in are going to be in the Peterborough area, and Trent and Fleming.
There are a lot of excuses here.
Like Trent's probably the best campus I've ever seen for having access to like nature right away.
Oh, it's awesome.
You know, and like the nature trails, the wildlife conservatory that's there just around the river is awesome. So getting out and like going for a walk, even like you said, after those 2 hours of study time, like it might even be enough if you are like crunched for time. Taking like an hour break in nature to go for a walk could be enough to get you refreshed and reinvigorated to go back to doing another hour or two of studying without feeling like that you're overdrawn or like taxed too much. Or at the end of the day, like it's way better than just like jumping on social media right away or watching TV. You know.
Well, let's talk science about that. So one thing, I'm a psych major, so I have all these tricks they've studied to help you study. One thing is not stimulating your brain post-study. So if you're going to go watch TV right after studying, what you're doing is putting that information from watching TV it's in your working memory right now, because you're, you know, it's gone from short-term into working, and then eventually it'll go into your long-term stores. And you're convoluting the information you just studied with what you're seeing on TV. And studies have shown that it greatly reduces your memory consolidation. So one of the best things you can do post-study period is take a minute and let things settle in. You're building those neural connections. You're building those connections into your long-term memory. Let it soak into your long-term memory by just chilling out. If you can't chill out, go to bed. Have a nap. Or what I do is go to nature. Because that's where I find solitude. And even if it's just 15 minutes, you just need a minute to let things sink in. And I've taken that practice even from yoga. That's why, you know, you lay on the mat for a couple minutes after, because you're just letting everything you've done sink in for a second. And it's just simple central nervous system training, but it's really effective if you just give yourself a minute.
Totally. Now, with that, are there any sort of breathing techniques that you think can help students the most? There's a handful of different breathing techniques. One, it depends on what you're looking for. So I kind of have my basic 3 that I go to, that I like my back pocket breathing techniques. And the first one I use is more of a meditative, like let's get into the zone, let's get some focus. Do you want me to demonstrate them? Sure.
Or do you?
You can demonstrate them.
The first one I use So I pull on my breath work from practicing Kundalini yoga, which is just a breath focused yoga practice. This one in particular is just like meditation 101. So what I do is the first thing you do is you want to touch all your finger points together.
Okay.
Doing this just stimulates the touch centers in your brain, so you're not wandering off and kind of, I don't know, being distracted by other things. Or if you're touching something that has a different texture, you're going to start to kind of tune into that.
Right.
So here, brain's occupied. Second thing I do is your gaze needs to be down at where your thumb points are, because that actually stimulates, I believe it's your pituitary gland, to relax, looking down, a downward gaze, as opposed to an upward gaze has been studied to actually stimulate you to have more energy. So I like to tune in by looking down and not closing my eyes, because that's when I wander off into, you know,
right.
dreamland or something. So that gives me a focus, and now my sight center in my brain is occupied. So basically we're trying to keep the brain busy in a way that's mindful. And then from here, I'm going to take a deep breath in through my nose. And I like to do it for 6 seconds, but it depends on your lung capacity. Some people get overwhelmed with that, so 4 is cool too, a good place to start. Breathing in through your nose and really expanding your belly, so it should balloon out. That's getting you optimal oxygen. So first off, like we were saying, oxygen to the brain, good for memory retention, and just good for your brain to work in general, but also good for your whole body, so stress relief in general. So you're breathing in for a count of 4 or 6. I like counting because that keeps my brain busy, and I don't have the opportunity to wander off into thought. And then what I do is exhale through my mouth, and you're going to do puffs of air. So we're like puffing out. I like to think about kind of squeezing out like the bad bits, whatever's in your way. So I'm taking my 6-second inhale, and then so 6 puffs or 4 puffs.
6 or
so
4,
match your breath that way.
Okay.
And then inhale again, 6, and just continue doing that. One of my biggest tips is set a timer so that you don't have to count how many breaths you're doing. You're not distracted that way. So I set a timer for about 3 minutes. That's all it takes. That just gets me in the zone. The puffs of air, you want to try to pump your stomach as well. So I like to picture my stomach going in is what's squeezing the air out. So basically we're just cleaning yourself out. If you can picture... One of the things I picture is like, you know those things that you like flame fire with? I forget what they're called, but...
like the bellows or whatever.
Yeah. I just picture that, like pumping things through. We're pumping blood through. We're getting oxygen around. So it's setting you up. It's stimulating you in that sense. But that downward gaze is bringing you into that more zen state. So you're getting more relaxed that way.
Cool.
So that's one of my favorite breath techniques, just to tune in.
So you do that like before you start studying?
Or mid-study if I'm feeling kind of...
distracted?
Yeah, exactly.
Like losing energy.
Exactly. So that's more something you do if you're already feeling kind of level-headed and not too stressed about things. But if you're feeling stressed, this next technique is something that I would do. So if you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed or just like oversaturated, there's too much, that feeling of just like, whoa. This technique is called a cooling breath or a cleansing breath. What you'll do is you're actually going to breathe in through your mouth now. So your nares or your nasal cavities actually warm up the air and filter it so that it goes into your body. So you're breathing in warm air. We want to now cool the body down because we're overstimulated, we're oversaturated. So breathing in through your mouth, it's kind of like, you know when you chew a piece of gum and you breathe in and it's nice and cold? We're essentially doing that to your whole body. So there's a couple different ways to do it. I've learned through teaching this to clients that not everyone can roll their tongue. If you can, you're going to do this. Roll your tongue up into like a little straw. If you can't, you're just going to push your lips together and breathe through that way. So it's a really similar technique. You're breathing in through your mouth and out through your nose. So it takes a little practice because that's kind of backwards from what we've all been taught. But what you're going to do is, again, I like the 6 or 4 seconds. And if you need to stimulate yourself by touching your hands together, cool. I like to actually put my hands on my stomach or on my chest so that I can monitor whether or not my belly is rising or my chest is rising. So just to see that I'm getting full oxygen. So you're going to inhale through that curled tongue. Or your pursed lips, whatever works for you. So this one feels silly. Do it while you're alone if you're going to be distracted by that. But you'll breathe in. And then out through your nose. So that one I find really helpful. You can feel the cold air
You
coming
can,
in.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's very.
So it's very tangible to kind of realize what it's doing. It's that
Mhm.
nice cool air. It's just bringing you down. It's a really good one to do even in the summer if you're like overheated. It doesn't just
totally.
need to be mental stress, but specifically for exams, if you're feeling that, panic and you can't get yourself out of it with your own emotional regulation system, then just jump into that breath work. Breath work does a lot of subconscious work that you don't even need to actively do yourself. So that's what I would say if you're feeling anxious.
Mhm.
And then I would say the big one, students are all exhausted. However, they should be getting good sleep. That's another thing we should talk about.
Right.
But breath of fire is one of my favorites. This is a really effective way just to like pound some energy through your body. Breath of fire basically rapidly pumps your blood through your system.
Okay.
Like almost like CPR would, kind of like you're pumping into the chest and doing the chest compressions. You're going to do that into your diaphragm. And it's a bit of a tricky one to get the hang of, but once you do, you'll realize the benefits quite quickly. It not only increases energy, increases heat in the body, so you've got that blood flow stimulation. It also actually has been shown to aid with your immune system because you're getting more oxygen around. So it's going to basically any metabolic process in your body requires oxygen. So it's a really effective way just to kind of give yourself a boost everywhere. So breath of fire is a tricky one. But it's worth practicing. So you need to build up a strong diaphragm muscle for it. So give yourself some patience in that. What I recommend is doing really short spurts first because doing this for a long time is challenging. So set a timer for 20 seconds, try it out, and then incrementally increase from there. You can put your hands wherever you please. Again, I like to do it on my stomach or I just set them on my lap. And then what you're going to do is the only active part of breath of fire is the exhale. So you don't have to worry about inhaling. Your body's going to do that involuntarily because you just need to get more air in.
Right.
So what you're going to do is rapidly in and out through your nose. You're going to pump your stomach in and exhale at the same time.
Okay.
And you're going to do that really quickly. So it feels kind of silly, but the idea is you're only focusing on the exhale. The inhale just happens. You don't have to worry about that. So even trying 10 at a time. And
So the breathing techniques are super important, and getting that practice in is really valuable. I find that even for myself, sometimes it's hard to like remember to include those in whether it's like a daily or weekly practice. Do you have any like strategies you use or what?
Just to remember to do them?
Yeah, like as students that might be like, busy, stressed out, and distracted, what can they kind of do to remember to implement those things?
It's a good question. I think I've seen the benefits now from actually doing them that I just now it's like my go-to. Okay, I'm feeling stressed, let's breathe.
Yeah.
So I mean, my first piece of advice is try it and see how it changes your perspective and changes your state.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really need to, like, do my Tulsi Tabata intervals in your 10 minutes, like, do the breath work.
Right.
So just writing it into your schedule, writing it into your to-do list so that it's intentional and it's not one of those, like, I'll get to it when I do. You won't.
Yeah. So whether it's a paper schedule or if you do use like a digital calendar or a reminder list of any sort,
just put it in
there.
Yeah, and it's easy to overlook because it's 2-3 minutes long, and so you're just like, oh, I'll remember to do that, or it doesn't seem significant enough to put in your big paper schedule or your big, your online whatever you use. But I've found the effects of it are so profound that it's certainly worth prioritizing.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. I think that's. I will implement that myself as well and make sure that it goes in there. Just because I think everybody can benefit from that breath work, and whatever it takes to start to form it more as a habit is probably a good move. So the last thing I think that we can touch on today is a little bit about this whole interesting world of floating, and if you think not to be like salesy or anything, but I think it's just a cool experiment now that it's actually here in Peterborough. I mean, you're still a student, you got the chance to. I mean, I don't think I even really found the value of meditation until after university, even though I studied it a lot in university, and we definitely like we had some professors that like even made us like meditate in class
Oh, cool.
briefly, like kind of guided us through the process. But it wasn't until afterwards where I started to actually explore it myself. And so this whole like deeper realm of like stress release and meditation that can and is floating, what sort of value do you get out of that? Or do you like, obviously I've seen how awesome that you feel after like floating, and it's like a
Yeah.
great experience. But I think maybe just there's definitely like it's definitely a cool offer, and I hope that students are coming in to float or try it as sort of like a de-stress if they don't have these practices down in place for their own sort of meditation or like ritual of going out into nature regularly. So what sort of do you think is the number one thing? Would it be best to do? Would it best be do like in between exams to like reset for the next exam, or after all of them are done? How should students kind of celebrate with this whole like meditation thing?
I mean, there's benefit to it regardless of when you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you're going to be relaxed, and that's cool. So if you use it as a way to kind of finish off a grand finale of exams, cool. You're going to get the benefits of it. But I would definitely recommend doing it during. Whether or not that means, you know, you study for an exam and then you hop in the float tank or something like that. Just what I see the benefits of that is it's talking about, like, studies have shown that, you know, going to sleep has benefited your memory consolidation. So the float tank has been shown to kind of put you into that deeper state of relaxation. It's not quite sleep, maybe pre-sleep, we'll say. But that's really going to help your memory consolidation. So if you're studying for an exam, let's say you've got an exam tomorrow, make the last thing you do, so study today, you've got an exam tomorrow, go for a float tonight. Let all that stuff that you've studied today sink in. This is giving you that peaceful, non-distracted zone to let things sink into your long-term memory without, like, you don't have distractions in the tank. You've got total darkness. You've got no sound besides the sound of your own breath, should you choose to tune into that. And there's nothing, you know, in your way, touching your body, getting you distracted from that. So really good place to just, like, let things, sink deeper into your mind.
Cool. Well, I had to dip out for a quick phone call while you talked about that. Rather
I hope
than
I made sense.
I will. I'll have to go back and double check. So yeah, that's awesome.
I was talking about not being distracted while I was distracted from you being on the phone. So it was good.
It was very challenging for your
good.
for your mind. A little bit of a mental workout this morning.
Totally.
Awesome. So I think that gives students a bunch of cool tips, and I'm sure we'll be back for more of these sessions as we learn more about what we can kind of help and offer to as strategies. Basically, probably next time the semesters roll around. So for now, let's bring this one in for a landing. And thanks for joining me for the first of many conversations, Telsey.
Yeah, it was fun.
Cool.